This is a book that I have been loaning out for the last 20 years. All right, not quite 20 years, maybe 15 years. I paid about $140 for it when I first started teaching because it had to be shipped from USA. You can now get it considerably cheaper, but it was worth $140. And I have about 5 copies. Ed likes to talk about philosophy and method and where the two meet, and then how to, I guess, marry one to the other. And I really like what he says about listening. Maybe because we're all going to be stuck in our home environments for some time, I think it's particularly important to think about what's in the home environment and seize the opportunity to make that environment as supportive, as enabling, and as rich as possible. It's amazing that institutions like MSO and, I forgot which Philharmonic Orchestra it is. One of them are live streaming concerts for free, and we have an incredible amount of access and privilege in being able to use our internet capability to access these performances. I know internet isn't cheap, but when you measure it against the cost of attending a concert, it's a pretty good deal. There's a nice list in here of how to listen. And again, because we're all spending much more time in our home environments, you have an unprecedented opportunity to make the listening environment your kids are immersed in as rich as possible. That doesn't mean you should just listen to Suzuki CDs all day, and I would be disappointed if you did. But I think it means chasing composers that appeal or chasing styles that appeal and allowing exploration to happen. Music can be a lot more than just music. It can be history, maths, geography, physics, science, and of course art. But it has the capacity to introduce us to a full range of subjects if we ask who the composer was, when they were alive, who were they writing for, what type of music were they writing, what else was happening at that time, and where, and then what else was happening in other places in the world at that time. Suddenly the whole world opens up to us. We've just used a different scalpel to cut it open. Here are some ideas for listening from Ed's book, Teaching from the Balance Point. Level 1, just get the notes and rhythm of the piece. Cool. Listen for the bowings, slurred notes versus separate bows. I would also say listen for direction, because by book 2, I never have to teach that Two Grenadiers starts with an up bow. The kids just know it. Listen for the simple articulations, staccato versus legato. And tenuto. Tenuto is important, again, book 2. Listen for the musical line and direction of notes. Listen for the form of the piece. Listen for the dynamic contrasts. Listen for fingerings, positions, portamento and vibrato. Listen for advanced bowings on or off the string, spiccato, ricochet, etc. Listen for ornamentation. Listen for advanced interpretation, comparing different artists' musical ideas. Obviously, you can't listen for these 10 things at once, so you have to listen a lot of times. I think that's pretty obvious. He goes on to say, when my advanced students reach the point in the Suzuki repertoire where their reading skills have caught up with their playing ability, they like to use their Suzuki books to learn the notes to new pieces. I allow this with one important criterion. To be certain that they have not stopped listening to their reference recordings, they must assure me that they are an authority on their piece before they are allowed to begin studying it with the written music. To be deemed an authority on their new piece, the students must be able to listen to me perform the piece and tell me if I have altered a bowing, played a wrong note, or misplayed a rhythm. They do not need to tell me exactly what I did wrong, but recognize that something wasn't quite right in that measure. Here's the kicker. This is the important part. This is the part that makes practice at home so much easier, right? Then I know that if they misread notes in their new piece, they will catch themselves immediately and check to see why the measure they just played didn't sound right. And here's the part that costs hundreds of dollars and thousands of dollars in lessons repairing errors that could have been preempted. Otherwise, we run the danger of accepting whatever comes out of the violin on the first reading as the reference, and we are forever after chasing wrong notes and bowings that were simply misread on the initial playing of the piece. So he's saying, before you start learning the piece, know it so well inside your head that you'll correct yourself if there's a mistake. And correct yourself doesn't actually mean, oh, my B flat was not flat enough, I'll move my finger back. It actually means, oh, that's weird, that's not right, hold on. Oh, that's a B, I don't think I played B flat then, hold on. B flat is that low one on the A string. That's B, oh yeah, when I play that, it sounds so much better. I think this becomes really critical around book 3, when suddenly we have a lot of minor and it's not as pleasant to hear as our previous repertoire. It's not all major and happy and easy and predictable. It's a little unusual, or it's a little bit melancholy, and often kids will try to make it cheerful, especially if they haven't been listening to the CD much. So this is like foolproofing your pieces, right? The more quickly you want to learn something, the more levels of listening you should invest in it. The less corrections you want made to a piece, the more time you spend listening to it and establishing a good model in the inner ear before attempting to assess with the outer ear what you're actually doing. This then tracks onto Ed's next idea, the reality of practice. And I'm going to read out what he says about the 3 C's, the 3 steps involved in the development of skill. The first one is comprehension, or understanding the task. The second one is cooperation, getting your physical body to cooperate with what your mind comprehends. And number 3 is constructive repetition, repeating the tasks after you have achieved cooperation. Comprehension, that sounds pretty easy, right? Just get the kid to understand what we're actually asking them to do. Harder than you might think. I've certainly spent years saying, please listen to the CD. And then I understood that what I actually had to say was, please listen to the CD 5 times every day of the week that ends with the letter Y. Because please listen to the CD could mean once or 4,000 times, or the first track, or the whole thing, or it can mean a million things. So I think giving students as clear and concise language as possible, so that there is a very small box that we are asking them to tick, and making sure they understand what the contents of that box are, what the parameters of their task are. The cooperation is where we make another great mistake. We say, hey, I'll practice this thing until I get it right. You heard the danger word, right? It was until. The word isn't until I get it right. It's until I can't get it wrong. And that's a different thing. If you practice until you get it right, that's very possibly 11 times wrong and then 1 right. The next day when you go back to repeat that passage, you're going to get it wrong. And I can say this with 1000% certainty. I've proven it to myself many times because I have been impatient and I have practiced until I got it right. And then I have, I got it, great, next thing. Next day, it's gone. Usually we are practicing too fast, and that may be because we have a really fantastic inner ear that has the piece at a very assertive or capable tempo, and we need to actually strengthen the inner ear so that we can slow it down. The better you know it, the easier it is to slow it down. It's a bit like speaking. If you know the word hospital very well, you can slow it down. If you've only ever said hospital, 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 it doesn't sound right, I can't do it anymore. If we keep saying the words hospital, 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 gradually that sibilant sound will creep back in and the rest of the word will fall into place. So we need to work on things until we can't get it wrong, or practice it when we get it right. You don't practice until you get it right, you practice, and when you get the passage right, that's when you actually start to practice. So maybe I should be using different language. I should be saying, let's correct that and then practice it. There we are. We're back at step 1, comprehension, and making sure the box is small enough to tick accurately and completely. Last idea, constructive repetition. I can't word this any better, so I'm going to read. When we use our new slogan, practice when you get it right, we might indeed play the passage incorrectly 5 times before we get a correct attempt. The next step is to even the score by playing 5 more correct times to make up for the 5 incorrect ones. Then continue to play the passage 10 or more times correctly to build security and skill. If we do follow this through to this 3rd step of constructive repetition, the reality of our practice will become 5 times incorrectly and 15 times correctly. Surely, when we take out the instrument to play tomorrow, the passage is far more likely to be correct on the 1st step. The penny game is pretty good. You take out a pile of 10 and you stack them and you say, these are mine, and every time, penny, we'd use dollars or 10-cent pieces or 5-cent pieces or whatever you want to use, okay? Something you've got 10 of. Get 10 of them. They're mine. When you get it right, you can have one. Okay, so, we don't get any currency for a while because we're trying to get it right. And then we do get it right. And you say, great, here's the dinosaur. And then because we're a bit overconfident, we speed and we lose the dinosaur. But we did get a dinosaur, so we can probably get it again. So we slow down a bit, go a bit more carefully and get the dinosaur back again. And then because we feel more confident, we get another dinosaur. And then we're overconfident and we lose one. And that's kind of the trajectory, like up, I lost a few, up a few, and we zigzag up. This builds confidence in that kids decide they can do it. And sometimes you need to lower your expectations a little bit for correct and amazing, and accept that if we're working on intonation in a passage, maybe the bow control won't be perfect, but focus on the goal. We can fix one thing at once, so we prioritize and triage, and we say, we're working on the intonation here. Let's get that B flat to be amazing. And then you just ignore the bow that's sloshing about and you go, worry about that tomorrow, next week, some other time, okay? But the penny game or the currency game is a good thing to do. And by all means, if you think that you can win 10 pennies on the first go, grab your child's violin and let them play the game with you. And you will be both humbled and gain confidence by the end of it, because no one ever just gets to 10 on the first 10 goes. All right, I do sometimes, but it's rigged. I think we can all work on our home environments. I can, for sure. I can certainly work on targeting the way we listen and on actively listening for more stuff. I am a little bit lazy in that I put on the recordings and I just let them happen in the background. And I'm also a little bit lazy in that because I can play, Audrey will often say, well, can you play that bit for me then? Because I'll tell her something's wrong and there's a snip fit and whatever else. And I should probably put the CD on so she can hear it exactly as her inner ear wants to hear it. But instead I'm a bit lazy and I often play it. And that's maybe not the best thing I could be doing. It's great in that it shows her what she should be doing, but it doesn't make her ear get any better. So I'm working on my home environment. I am working on more constructive review sessions that keep focus or that switch focus. Make sure we choose something for that day, like super straight bow or eyes on the Chrysler Highway or every finger on their tips or amazing trills, ringing threes. Pick a skill and hammer that skill. Expressive vibrato, great dynamics. Make a list, or even better, get your kid to make the list, because then you understand what's in their brain as a list of priorities and what they don't yet know to listen for or to work on. And that's really helpful. I can give anyone 20 things, but if you don't comprehend 15 of those ideas, they're useless. I say, today we're going to focus on ringing intonation. And you go, what on earth is that? So maybe establishing this as a collaborative project is actually a better idea. And if anyone would like to start lists in the Facebook group, I will be so happy with that. Again, I think we learn a lot more when we share and we discover gaps in our knowledge, which I'm forever doing, and we are challenged by what other people are prioritizing or thinking about, or just considering, I suppose, what they're developing. So I'm going to work on my home environment this week. I really like Ed's idea of the levels of listening, and I like that requires a minimum of 10 repetitions of listening to a piece. Whether you want to do all of those in a day and literally tick them off one by one, whether you want to try and work through them with your child and see if you can hear shifting, if you can hear bowing, if maybe they can point out to you, yeah, Mom, can't you hear that's in third position? Or that's on the D string. It doesn't sound like A string. Letting kids teach you gives them so much confidence in their own abilities. It makes them feel valid and needed. And I think it's important that we respect the development that they're capable of and that they are actively undergoing. I'm absolutely in awe of the fact that Audrey can play two hands together on piano because I can't. And when I stop and actually really listen to what she's doing, I go, holy wow. And every time I actually express that to her, she's delighted because she can do something I can't do, and she likes explaining it to me and teaching it to me, and suddenly she plays it 4 times better. So it works. I have whittled on long enough. I hope this has left you with something useful. If you want to watch me whitter again, of course you can. If you want to write down that list, I highly recommend that you just whiz back and do that. And maybe I'll hear some entertaining stories of the penny game, or a list of priorities for review pieces, or, the fact that you listened to the Bark of What in Book 5 800 times. I'd love to hear your stories.